Thank you for joining us today for Leveraging Data and Collaboration in the Housing Sector. We're here to launch the Rural Housing Information System to the private sector. I'm Kezia Cowton. I work with the Rural Ontario Institute. We are a charity that's focused on rural and economic and community development. We deliver economic development initiatives that promote growth and prosperity in rural and northern Ontario, and we provide data analysis that serves to inform rural decision makers and planners as they face developmental issues within their jurisdictions. The Rural Housing Information System team has been focusing on that lack of affordable housing and just housing data in our rural communities, and we've created this system called the Rural Housing Information as a lead solution. As we all know, the access to rural information is very challenging. The levels of inadequate housing vary across our rural regions, and the need exists everywhere, but the solutions really need to be tailored to local conditions and be place appropriate. Rural housing is very different than our urban centers. The biggest factor in population change is the levels of churn across rural regions as levels of youth out-migrate from our communities and empty nesters in-migrate. Housing attainability is strongly linked to labor force shortages that are more acute in rural regions. In one survey from 8 of our southwestern counties, they found that 91% of employers reported employees having difficulty finding appropriate housing. Today's session seeks to inspire and create collaboration to address rural housing. We're hearing from a number of housing industry experts on their innovative approaches and to get a preview of the Rural Housing Information System data solution. Please join me in welcoming our speakers today. We have Brandon Ray from the Ottawa Real Estate Board, John Lochner, one of our local builders that works with our municipalities, and the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus staff that are joining us from the 103 municipalities, Meredith Staveley-Watson and Jim Pine. And at the end of today's session, we'll hear from my colleague, Charlotte Craig, about the Rural Housing Information System.
So a little bit of background on who I am, I guess, would be helpful. I am Brandon Ray, as Kezia mentioned. I am the Manager of Policy and External Relations here at the Ottawa Real Estate Board. And so my function is primarily pushing for housing supply and adequate housing supply for Ontarians, especially in the Ottawa Valley. Prior to that, I traded in real estate for a number of years, and so I'm very familiar with the industry. I heard firsthand and dealt firsthand with many stories of people trying to get into municipalities that they couldn't, and many people having to leave for labor shortages or for lack of affordable options. And so what does a real estate board do? And really, I think there are two functions that I'll focus on today. One is we maintain data through our MLS systems. And the second is we advocate. We advocate for policy, especially in the housing sector, but really in economic development as well. So an MLS system is something that you might not know the name very well, but it's something you're probably very familiar with. And that is, it's a multiple listing service system. It's a cooperative system of realtors coming together across Canada to share listing data and housing resale data. And so the basics are pretty clear. We operate a system here at the Ottawa Real Estate Board where our members can post their listings, we retrieve their sales data, and that gives us sort of an unparalleled access to data. It's real-time data. We can tell you one day to the next, an hour to the next, what's going on in what neighborhoods where, including very rural municipalities. And this allows us to do some interesting things like trend analysis and forecasting. And we use that data to create policy recommendations. And now typically we've done that in a silo. And I think that's true of a lot of boards across Ontario, certainly across Canada. And we were really happy to connect with our friends here at the Rural Ontario Institute to see how we can better collaborate with our friends across several industries. So we do face some limitations though, and that is we don't have access to all housing data. Again, boards focus primarily on resale data. There is some new build data in there, but it is primarily people selling their homes. And so we get that in-migration and out-migration effect. And Charlotte, if you could switch the slide one more time here. Oh, I guess I rearranged them, eh? So I want to talk about the value of the data and what your local real estate board can do for you. And really, again, because we have unparalleled data, it's real-time data, we can do a few things. We can help developers mitigate risk. So when you're looking in a small municipality, you're going to want to know whether or not you can profit from maybe investing in a development. We're also going to get ideas of what kind of affordability levels are out there. And we'll hear from our members what are the challenges that their clients are facing in those rural municipalities when it comes to affordability. Secondly, we can use our data in conjunction with our partner stakeholders to advise policymakers and to assist policymakers in making data-driven policy solutions for housing. The problem that we've seen at the board level is that often policy becomes a hip-fire issue, and we want to help avoid that. We want to make sure that whatever's coming in is going to be a long-lasting, high-impacting policy measure if it has to do with housing and ensuring that people are properly housed where they want to be housed. And thirdly, our data can help municipalities, especially rural municipalities, avoid missing opportunities for something like infrastructure funding. I don't think it's any secret if you're in this call, you probably are very well aware that there is sort of an imbalance in where funding goes in the province when it comes to infrastructure and housing support. And it's usually around cities. And it seems like rural municipalities are left out of the equation. We have the data to show you why that's a problem. We've watched it happen, especially with the onset of COVID and sort of the out-migration of office workers into rural municipalities. And we're more than happy to support you. And I think that's really all I have to say. I tried to get through 10 minutes as quickly as I can, but I would suggest that real estate boards and anybody that's interested in working with the real estate board, reach out because we are here to help. We have the data and certainly we are all hoping for the same thing here, which is housing options, especially in rural municipalities.
Thank you, Brandon. That's great. You know, really hearing from our different sector groups that are in the housing sector about how we can collaborate together. So I'm going to turn it over to John, and he's going to share with us about his build projects that he's been doing with our municipalities.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk, I'll give a brief background. I actually started a company called Cabinscape about 7 years ago. We are operating short-term rental accommodations. We have 35 cabins across the province. But as part of that sort of process of building and working with different municipalities, we've looked for different solutions on how to get our cabins built and how to get them in place. And one of those solutions was ultimately setting up a CSA certified factory. So we build CSA Z240 MH manufactured homes, which are basically year-round dwellings. Realizing that there's an opportunity there to build and sell, we started up our second company here, which we called Wildscape Co. So Wildscape Co is new, but we have through Cabinscape built over 40 units at this point in time. But to get things, you can go to the next slide. To get things started off, we actually reached out and partnered with Lanark County, and we won an FCM grant last year for a pilot project to build our first couple units. So they're in the factory right now. But the main focus there was to look at how we can manufacture responsibly using responsible materials. So a big part of the whole idea was essentially what we call the Sink House project, where we're actually trying to come up with a manufactured build process that is, if not at least carbon negative or carbon neutral, but actually carbon negative. And then also keeping in mind what the materials are off-gassing or the quality of life that they're offering. So instead of a lot of manufactured homes right now, which are using vinyl siding, spray foam insulation, vinyl flooring, vinyl covered drywall, we're trying to get rid of all of that stuff, and basically we're using like cellulose insulation, wood fiber insulation, a lot of locally milled lumber, and ultimately this not only reduces the carbon load, but it also reduces or actually completely eliminates VOCs or volatile organic compounds. Basically, it gives you clear air to breathe inside of your house. Next slide, please. So aside from the actual build process, this is one of those units in the factory right now. Aside from the actual build process, we were looking at what are the challenges, what are the roadblocks that we ran into in our own builds in the past, and working with clients, discussing with clients One of the main problems is essentially the process itself. So what we've decided to offer full services. So basically what we do is we'll go right from the beginning, work with clients, work with people on everything right from the zoning process. So figuring out whether a unit can be built or multiple units can be built, or what needs to be done in order to make zoning changes, in order to move forward with the builds. So we'll also help with permitting. Obviously, we do the unit fabrication, site preparation, and then I think a big portion as well is project management. So just the idea of having somebody that's working from end to end. So from the very beginning, right up to the finish of the project. There's one of us working on every detail and making sure that things get pushed along so the ball doesn't get dropped at any point in time. A big benefit of manufactured building is we can run in parallel timelines. So we can do that red tape, we can do that project management at the same time as we're actually manufacturing. There's also actually the opportunity to effectively stockpile units. So you can build and fabricate units and have them on hand while you're looking for property or searching for property. And then another thing that we're doing in order to try to expedite the process is just not only are the units pre-designed, but we also have pre-designed foundation options, decking options. So basically you can you can skip most of the design process in your build. So we already have different types of foundations that have been engineered that we can apply on any site. So that allows you to skip a huge part of the timeline along design and move right into the build process. Next slide, please. Another big benefit of some of our experience at this point is we can build anywhere. So as we've talked about, there is a lot of focus on urban building, and there's ADUs and backyard dwellings options that we can offer, but we also have a fair bit of experience in building in rural areas and even highly remote areas. We're one of the only builders that actually has a off-grid CSA certification as well. So we've built in some pretty challenging locations, and it's great to have manufactured housing as an option for that, because it reduces the amount that you have to get trades back there, get materials back there if you're working in more remote areas. Next slide. So from the experience that we've had partnering with Lanark and working with their affordable housing corporation, we're looking at sort of what are our next steps and how can we think bigger, and how can we work with other affordable housing corps or work on the general worker housing problem that we've talked about. I mean, we've seen that ourselves with Cabinscape. Just finding staff and housing staff is a huge problem, especially in rural areas. So we're looking at how can we quickly and modularly build. So what we've started is what we're calling the RHIS project, and the idea is basically we're expanding multiple floor plans. So we have bachelors, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and we're also working on barrier-free design as well. And the idea essentially being that these can be individually produced. You have a couple different options as far as being able to flip floor plans or front door or side door accesses. And with those basic options, you can basically fit things together in pretty much any different way to occupy the space or optimize your space. So this might be something you could do on a corner lot where you have multiple units. And then you also have a sort of a shared module where you can see there's laundry or shared storage, that sort of thing. Next slide. So, I mean, that was a larger option, but with Bill 23, or with the opportunities here where we're seeing a lot of municipalities opening up opportunities for 2 or even 3 or 4 dwellings on a single lot, the idea here is you can put these together in like a duplex, for example. There's a lot of cost savings there as far as you can kind of share your mechanical. So only 1 hot water heater, reduced amount of electrical run, or you're only running your services to 1 unit. And as you can see, there's all these different sort of variations where you can have front door entrance, you can do an elongated profile, you can do 2 side door entrances, or you can again have this shared sort of access module. Next slide. Similar sort of thing. You can do triplex setups as well. And next slide. Yeah, sorry. And then the idea there being row housing is also and option. And just going back to the 3 or 4 slides before there, we're really looking at how can you multiply this, how can you expand it, or how can you optimize whatever your lot space is to put as many units in as you want. I think that's my time. Thank you.
Thanks, John. That's great. Really innovative thinking about how builds can be done differently and how John's company is doing that with our municipalities in our regions across rural Ontario. So I'm going to introduce Meredith and Jim Pine from the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, and they're going to share about their regional build project.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kezia. Good morning, everyone. My name is Meredith Stavely Watson, and I'm the Manager of Government Relations and Policy for the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. I'm joined today by my colleague, Jim Pine, who's a consultant with the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, otherwise known as EORN, who is a partner to the EOWC working on broadband and cell for the region. Thank you for being here with us today to learn more about the EOWC and our bold regional 7 and 7 housing plan. Next slide. Okay, perfect. So this is a day to come together to support the region of Eastern Ontario. The EOWC is the region's voice for 103 municipalities across Eastern Ontario, and we represent about a quarter of Ontario's municipalities. And advocate for regional priorities to help support communities and residents that we serve. So we believe that when we come together, we can do great things for the region and our residents, and that includes working together with private and public sectors like yourself. So the EOWC has been together for about the last 20 years voluntarily to better advocate for the region and our residents. Including our city partners, we represent about 1.2 million residents, and we cover a geographic area of about 50,000 square kilometers. So that's about the size of Nova Scotia, from Northumberland County all the way east to the Quebec border. Our board of directors is made up of 13 upper and single tier municipalities across the region. So we have a chair and vice chair who are currently the warden of Renfrew County and the warden of Peterborough County. Next slide, please. Every March, the EOWC comes together to set strategic priorities for the region. And so for 2023, this includes long-term care, paramedic services, and to no surprise, housing. So you're probably wondering what the heck the 7 and 7 plan is and how it came to be. So back in June of 2022, the EOWC brought together municipal housing staff experts from across our region to talk about housing and related services. So this includes social service, economic development planners, etc. The key problem was clear that we needed to do more to help solve our community housing wait list, and a regional approach made more sense than tackling it one by one, municipality by municipality. Specifically, we looked at our municipal service wait list, which represent individuals waiting for community housing across the region. So we believe that these people on our wait list must not be left behind, and housing them will help to support the overall health, well-being, and economy across our region. When we first looked at this in June of 2022, there were between 12,000 to 14,000 people on the waiting list. Now we are seeing that close to 16,000 across the region. Wait times for community housing are on average 5 years and up to 10 years in some cases. In addition, Stats Canada has identified about 41,000 individuals across the regions now require core housing needs. So it's clear something must be done. Next slide, please. So the bold solution. Given the waitlist challenge that I just outlined, the EOWC has come up with a bold project called the 7 and 7 Regional Housing Plan. The EOWC is proposing to increase the supply of housing across Eastern Ontario by 28,000 units total in a 7-year build period. 7,000 of these units would be affordable community or rent geared to income units aimed at helping to end our municipal waitlist, but this would also spur an additional 21,000 units that would be market rate attainable units. This would be achieved through a public-private partnership model working with builders like yourselves. Nowhere in Canada has there been a collaborative regional approach like this, and we are excited to be championing it. Just to give you a visual, next slide, please. There would be 28,000 units total, and 7,000 of them would be the community rental, and 21,000 would be the market rate. So just to give you a quick visual there. So last January, one of the largest financial institutions in Canada, Scotiabank, on our next slide, came out with a bold economic statement calling on federal and provincial governments to invest directly in community housing. Specifically, they say that Canada needs to double this type of housing stock. And the bank also recommends that grant-based approaches giving money directly to those who build and support housing is needed. Their support also outlines that this would be a smart economic move and would stimulate up to 3 times of that initial investment. We are seeing similar reports to this. Deloitte just came out with one earlier this week, supporting the data that investing in community housing really does help spur economic growth. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jim Pine.
Thanks, Meredith. The Eastern Ontario Regional Network is, as Meredith said, it's been around. It's the child of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. So the network is a municipal not-for-profit corporation, and it was set up to do regional projects where we had common issues. We've worked on broadband, and we're developing cellular coverage across the region right now. We'll have done about $500 million in public-private partnership work by the time we're done the cell project, and it was seemed a natural fit to look at community housing in a similar way, as Meredith said, across the region. So we have come up with a plan. It is a big plan, and it's pretty bold from our point of view, but we recognize that housing is an all-in requirement. We need all of the partners involved in housing to be a part of this particular project. That includes First Nations, housing corporations, the private sector, home builders of all kinds of rental, and governments at all levels, and certainly the not-for-profit sector. So we see this as an opportunity to bring everybody together in a concerted way, taking a regional approach to, pretty serious challenge that we have in community housing and in just the rental supply market itself. So next slide. We've, as I said before, the EOWC and EORNs developed some credibility, I think, over the last 10 or so years doing these big regional projects, and we think that using the model that we have in place now lends itself to this particular project. So we've done a lot of work to get ready to the point where we're at today, and been working with a lot of folks right across all of the partners in this project. We've been doing market soundings and talking, getting a lot of advice from home builders and others, which we've really appreciated. So we're trying to bring it all together. Next slide. So just to give you a basic idea what it could look like, this is kind of a notional representation of the way we see it potentially rolling out. Next slide. The way we calculated what we think the cost to be and how we've distributed is largely based on a per unit cost of about $440,000 to build a unit. That's an average cost of units of different sizes, and we validated that number with a number of folks that we've been doing market sounding with, including of course our own financial agencies inside government. And all this, what we've done is divide Eastern Ontario up into a series of regions, and then allocated the investments that would be required to get the 7,000 units built based on the percentage share each of the zone has to the overall wait list in the region. And so you can see this slide just gives you a bit of an idea what kind of investment would be in the zones. If you're looking at the far east of our region, United Counties of Prescott Russell, Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, and the city of Cornwall, about $305 million. And you can see the other numbers across the region. Just a notional way of distributing the investment that would be required. Next slide. Yeah, this is good. And then if we take those 7,000 units, we can notionally divide them up as well, again, based on the share of the overall wait list. So again, back to United Counties of Prescott Russell, about 688 units we think could go there based on their share of the waitlist, and you can see how it would be distributed across the region. This has been really helpful for us when we've been speaking with local councils and city councils across the region to give them just a visual representation what it might look like. They're all very interested in knowing what would our share of the bill be, and so we've done it this way. It's a very simple approach and probably subject to change, but it makes some sense because it's based upon the share of the waitlist. So you can see how this distribution might be in terms of the units themselves. Next slide. We're getting lots of coverage, lots of support. We've received resolutions of support from most of the municipalities across the region so far. We're continuing to meet with communities and municipalities. We've been meeting with MPs and MPPs, and you can imagine the kind of advocacy work that it takes to put a project like this together. But so far, so good. And again, I'll just another shout out to all of the folks we've been talking through the market sounding that have been so helpful to us in giving us advice on how to push it forward and validate some of the numbers that we've been putting together on it. So thanks very much for all of that. Next slide. Give you an idea, we've been at this for more than a year now. We are continue to work with our MPs and members of provincial parliament and others. We're finishing up the business plan to put all of the details in place. And we're hopeful that by the spring of this year, in 2024, I should say, we'll be getting provincial and federal support, because we know that they have to be a part of this in a funding approach. So the EORN and the EOWC is a funding aggregator. We bring all the funds together and then project management the work. And we've, as I say, we've had a fair bit of experience in doing regional work to date. So just a short timeline, but that's it for me.
Thank you both so much for that presentation. We really love hearing about all the important work that you're doing. So I'm now going to begin the last presentation of the day, and I am Charlotte Craig. I am the data trainer and the analyst for the Rural Housing Information System, which is managed by the Rural Ontario Institute. So we talked a little bit about the Rural Ontario Institute as well as the Rural Housing Information System a little bit at the beginning. But just to give a little bit more context, we have a platform which is called the RHIS. And this is a space that aggregates information from a variety of sources in regards to demographics, economics, housing market, housing supply, and zoning. This tool was really born out of the idea that not only all the groups of speakers that have spoken today, but everyone in the housing sector needs more information and data to support big decisions in their rural communities. So the RHIS seeks to make information easily accessible to facilitate the creation of affordable housing in rural regions. The RHIS is currently available in Southern Ontario, so both Eastern and Western and South Central Ontario. But we are expanding to Northern Ontario in the coming years, and then additional provinces, including Saskatchewan and Quebec in 2024. So what is the RHIS exactly, and how did we come up with the idea? So the RHIS, again, is managed by ROI, and from that, we were able to see that the data surrounding rural housing information is extremely poorly maintained, underpopulated, and ununiform between jurisdictions. This is causing a huge information gap for our stakeholders in our rural communities who need to make increasingly important decisions surrounding housing. So because of our connections through our parent organization, ROI, we were able to reach out and talk to all the different stakeholders that would be important to the RHIS. So we spoke to not only private builders and developers, as most of the individuals that are joining us today are associated with, but we also talked to municipal staff and council, social service and housing managers, real estate professionals, and nonprofit housing providers. We heard very similar challenges from all of the groups that we spoke to, but for today, we'll focus on what we heard from our developers and builders. So from our developers and builders, we heard that they needed reliable information on rules and incentives to entice them to consider rural areas where construction rules incentives vary. So for those working in rural regions, you know that there's huge differences between them. and having information to inform decisions about where to go, what to do is really important. Also, they needed data to assist with grant applications to improve their chances of success and determine the return on investment in rural areas. We also heard similar aspects from our other stakeholders, but overall, we found the idea was that rural housing data was poorly maintained, underpopulated, and non-uniform. So we saw this huge problem, this huge gap in information, and from that, we knew that we needed to bring in some really important partners to make a solution possible. So the creation of the RHIS began with a collaboration when the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, who we were lucky enough to just hear from, when they were awarded $1.2 million in 2022 from CMHC's Housing Challenge. They brought us on as a project manager, and in addition, they brought on Itergy, who is the tech firm who helps develop our data solution. ROI has since scaled the RHIS to rural Western Ontario, and this is only possible through our connections with the leads at the South Central Ontario Regional Economic Development Corporation, or SCORE, as well as the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus. Without these members, we wouldn't have been able to make this possible, so we really appreciate them coming on to create the RHIS, which seeks to provide local, reliable, salient, and current rural data to assist proponents and municipalities in the planning and construction of new affordable housing. So I'm now going to begin the demonstration. I'm just going to switch my screen really quickly, but today I'm going to be showing a full walkthrough of the RHIS, and we are going to be able to see all of its features. I'm going to be moving quite quickly just because of the nature of today's presentation. I don't want to keep you here all day, but when you are looking to sign up, you'll be able to have additional time with myself or anyone else on the RHIS team to make sure that you feel comfortable with the system. So it's going to feel a little bit like data overload, but do not fear, we have many resources available to you and your team. So the RHIS is a paid system unless you are a member of the one of the Wardens Caucus that I previously mentioned. So if you're part of one of those Wardens Caucus as a municipal staff member, you can log on and we will approve you. But those outside of those organizations, non-for-profits, developers will need to sign up and pay a subscription fee, which I'll talk a little bit about at the end. But you can actually begin the process of signing up by coming to the RHIS website, which I will send at the end of the presentation, and clicking the sign up now, or reaching out to me at the email that I've been sending emails to you from this whole time to set up this presentation. So once you have your information about logging in, you'll be able to come to the same page and log into the RHIS. So this is what the RHIS looks like, and this is the same page that everyone will be brought to when they gain access to the system. So a couple of things that I want to point out just right off the bat that we can get out of the way is that the whole system is able to be toggled between French and English. So if you or any member of your teams need that bilingual access, that's available in the right top corner, as well as links to our tutorial page. So as I said, today is going to go by incredibly quickly. We're going to see a lot of information. So if you need a more in-depth, slowed down version of a tutorial, we have a tutorial for every single one of the pages on the RHIS that you or your team can reference at any time. You can also click the submit feedback button. So if you are looking for a tool that is willing to listen to you and your input, you've come to the right place. We're looking for input on any bugs that you find, as well as suggestions of other features or anything else that you think would be important to us. This submit feedback button is a direct connection to us and our software team. So at any time while you're using the system, you can send that note to us and it will be able to be addressed immediately. So with those kind of logistic things out of the way, we can finally dive into what the RHIS really is. So this data solution brings together and aggregates information from many different sources, making it easy and accessible to get the information that you need to make your affordable housing or housing projects possible. So the site, when you look at it, it provides a short summary of what the RHIS is, as well as a link to the first tutorial that can show you about how to get started on the RHIS. When you want to navigate to a municipality, you can use the search bar You can use the map if you're geographically inclined, or you can use any of the picture icons at the bottom as well. So you are able to see at this time both Eastern and Western Ontario. You can toggle between the two using the drop-down box here. And when you are able to get your subscription, you're going to have access to Eastern and Western Ontario. But with your subscription, you will also get the additions of Northern Ontario, and then you'll get the other provinces for free included in your subscription as they become available. So for the purpose of today, this presentation is all for our Eastern members. So I'm going to be showing a variety of upper tier, single tier, and lower tier municipalities for us to view. So once you've selected your municipality, you're going to be brought to their overview page. For the overview page, I've shown the county of Renfrew at its top county level, but if I want to navigate to any of its lower tiers, I can select them here or search for them in the bar. The goal of the RHIS is really to show everyone the information that they need in the easiest way, so it's pretty easy to get and navigate through. All of our pages have a pretty similar layout. They have a summary in that grayish bar that you can see at the top of what to expect on the page, followed by high-level data points that you can see here, and then followed by some aspects that are interactable, so either municipal links, a map, or interactable graphs. The one thing that I'm going to note on this homepage is that we also include a list of separated towns. So the RHIS is exclusively geared towards rural municipalities. And because of this, we've removed urban centers so that we don't see that information skewed by those urban areas. So income can be skewed, housing values can be skewed by including urban areas. So we have a list of all of which have been removed from the system for your reference as you look to use it. All of our data points do come with a definition when you hover over the eye icon. So you can easily scoop that up as you're looking to make your own reports. And you can also see that it is cited using the hyperlink below so that you can see where the information is coming from and how it's being managed when you visit our data sources and definitions page. So all of those hyperlinks lead here, and you're able to see that information as well as the methodology that is used to calculate it. So on this overview page, we can see information about population, median income, average rent, and number of dwellings. So those are all held in these upper tiered data portions. And you can also see municipal links below them. So the municipal links are provided by municipalities. So these are updated on an annual basis, along with all of the other municipal data points. You can also see the community map. So the community map holds information, geographic information about assets in your community that are important to homeowners. So schools, parks, health services, or community or rec centers. So when you're looking to build in these communities, you want to make sure that they have the assets available to them to support the additional housing. So we have all of the assets within a 1 hour driving radius of each municipality because we know rural people typically have to drive outside of their municipalities to get additional services. So this is a federal resource that we've made increasingly user-friendly so that you can utilize that in your planning as well. So in this first page, we already have a ton of our different sources represented. We have municipal information that we have taken from municipalities and provided from our lovely partners at the municipalities. We have StatsCan data, classified data, as well as geographic data. So the RHIS really seeks to bring this all together so that you can better get the information that you need without having to go here, there, and everywhere and get the information. So using the left navigation bar, I'm now going to move to the demographics page. I'm showing the County of Northumberland for this example. The demographic page shows information about your community's population, age structure, and households. So you can see here again, that summary followed by the high-level data points. So you can see these high-level data points. These first three are provided by StatsCan, the census. And you can also see some information about the by name priority list provided by our municipality. As you scroll down the page, you'll be able to see information over time in our interactable graphs. So this is census information from the 2011, 2016, and 2021 census. And all of these graphs are interactable. So if I wanted to see the trend of single parent households in this community over time, I can unselect all of the other data points and see the specific trend of single parent households in this community exactly, really easily, quickly, without having to do my own manipulation. The other thing is that you can actually download any of our graphics or our tables for your own manipulation. So if you are looking to make your own chart or use this information in a report, you can use the cloud icon with the downward facing arrow, and you can have access to that information in a CSV file. A couple of other things on this page is that age distribution by gender is also shown, as well as household demographics by year. We show a lot of information in different forms to make it as accessible as possible. So all the information in our graphics are also shown in our tables so that you can get the information that you need as quickly as possible. So moving again forward to the navigation bar on the left, I'm now going to show you the economics page. So the economics page shows information about your community's economy, including major industries, income, and unemployment. Similar to the last page, all of the information here is available for you to download, and you can look at all of this information at a really quick glance rather than having to sort through many different resources. The next page I'm going to show is the housing market page, which also includes information about property values, asking rent, shelters costs, and housing affordability. So those are our first few data points, but what I really want to focus on here is our average asking rent. So our average asking rent is actually calculated through classified listings. And this is special because most areas under 10,000 are not surveyed for rental information. So our rural areas are left with this huge information gap that they need information on, as increasing number of people are looking to rent in their areas. So we collect this information every month and update our charts to represent that information. So you can easily see how the market is developing based on cost, but you can also see the different kinds of rental types available. So houses, townhouses, anything in that sphere, based off of this graph as well. So you can really get an in-depth look of what your rental market is looking like in your community so that you can make informed decisions. The next thing that I'm going to show is the housing supply page. So this shows information about dwellings, permits, community housing, as well as many other data points. So the first couple data points here on the second row, you can see are all municipal data points surrounding municipally operated units and affordable units. So this is information that the municipality has provided to us once again, and it is really easy to see this information rather than having to search through many different housing or homelessness documents. As we scroll down the page, the one thing that I really want to highlight here is our permit information. So our permit information we get from StatsCan every single month. It's sent to us directly so that we can provide it to you. Permit information is really important to see what is being allowed in different communities so that you can be best informed in what areas are looking to grow and what kind of housing is being most popularly developed. So there's a lot of difficulty getting this information on your own, but we have it easily accessed here in our RHIS system. You can also see the housing units completed, so how many of those permits actually come to fruition, which can be really helpful in able to see the number of dwellings in each community and how they're growing over time when you're looking to make development decisions. Moving on to the next page is our housing and development page. So this can be really a useful tool for our developers looking to make affordable housing or multi-dwelling units, or both, in our communities in our rural areas. So with development charges, we all know that they're quite up in the air based off of different provincial guidelines. So as of right now, we're just showing whether or not development charges are being shown. But in the future, as the situation figures itself out, we'll be able to include more details there. But more importantly, we have a full list of exemptions and waivers, as well as municipal affordable housing grants and incentives. So this is just for educational purposes. It doesn't have all of the ins and outs of every single one of those grants, because that would be dozens of pages all put together here. But it's a really great jumping off point if you're looking to use any incentives or grants in these different communities without having to do your own searching. It saves you a ton of time. So you can really start here, and then that's where you can begin your research rather than starting from nothing. The next page that I'm going to show is the zoning page. So for this, I'm showing Peck, Prince Edward County. And you can see here, they have information surrounding their zoning, settlement and services, as well as municipal boundaries. So as we zoom in, let's zoom in on Picton, we can see the zoning as I toggle it on and off for each of these lots. We only show lots for multi-dwelling units as we are looking to encourage that kind of build in our rural communities rather than looking to encroach on our farmers' fields. We also have the settlements and services so that we can strive to build in areas that already have the infrastructure necessary to make these larger developments in our rural communities. If you really want to get nitty gritty, you can also use the mapping function and zoom right in on every single individual lot, and you can see the zoning codes there. You can also scroll down and you can see the links to the zoning bylaws as well as the zoning bylaw codes here. So you can understand better what those different codes on the map mean and what kind of residential zoning categories they have available in that region. So this is a really great tool that can help builders looking to make decisions see the areas that are available to them and make better decisions without having to go through paper copies of maps, multiple PDFs, emails back and forth from the municipality. So a real time saver when you're looking to make decisions. And as with the incentives, this is obviously a educational source. You're going to have to talk to the municipality at some time when you're looking to do these zonings. But again, a really, really great place to start if you're looking for this kind of information. The last tool that I'm going to show you is our community comparison tool. And this tool allows you to quickly compare all of the regions within the municipality to one another. So if I want to compare Prince Edward County to the County of Haliburton, I can easily do that by clicking Add Location, and I can see all of these different data points and compare them from one another in a flash without having to do my own research and pull all of these data points. So not only can you compare any of the areas east or west to one another in this tool, you can also add data points by using the Add Fields button. And you can look up the average asking rent for these regions, and you can compare them really quickly so that you can make informed decisions in your communities. So that's it for the demonstration. I really appreciate you bearing with me during that process. I know that was a lot of information, but I am now quickly just going to talk about our subscription options. So for private business owners, it is $5,000 per year plus tax and fees, which is really dependent on the type of payment that you make, whether that be EFT, e-transfer, or credit card payment. So with that 1-year subscription, you have 1 hour of a personalized session with myself to learn more about the RHIS and how best to use it. You will have continuous updates to the data. So I let you know that some of it's annually, some of it's monthly, and you will continuously get that new information. You'll get unlimited logins for your organization. So no longer sharing that single login and fighting over who gets to see it at what time. You'll all be able to see it on your own time. And you also get access to myself and our team who are looking to support you and encourage the use of this system at any time. So that's it for me. As I said, you can click the sign up now button, but I really encourage you to reach out to me at the email on the screen or reply to any of the emails that I've been sending you to learn more about how your organization can get involved with the RHIS. So thank you so much. I'm now going to open the floor for questions, and you can ask myself or any of the speakers that we've had today anything that you like by either raising your hand or messaging in the chat.
I'll just add something while people are scratching their heads about information overload and thinking about potential questions to ask. Certainly, we have a small group with us today, probably less than had registered for the session, but I encourage you as developers and builders to share this information with your colleagues, to let them know that there is this opportunity to access rural housing data on one centralized system, and we'd be happy to provide other sessions and demonstrations about what this data tool looks like, because certainly it's one thing to centralize rural data in one place, but it's important that all the stakeholders are actively utilizing that data. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us to ask for more information and or make those connections for other opportunities for other developers to learn about it as well.